I'd like to do today is just take a minute and point out that, first of all, you can go back any day in our slideshow for the week and take a look at what we did the previous day, especially Monday and Tuesday, which are our big new instruction days. So today, I want to point you towards Monday, where I have first in the middle there, that is a trailer for Banksy's movie Exit Through the Gift Shop, and that has in it some really good kind of looks at his work and a few clips of him actually out painting in the street, as well as some other interesting things. And then over here, where that the picture of the phone is, that's a clip of his 10 most kind of famous artworks. And then below that is a recording of yesterday's lesson that has me talking about a bunch of things and going over the classwork that's due today and stuff like that. So you can always go and check those things out, which I definitely encourage you to do if you miss class or if you need some more discussion. Another thing that I did yesterday, which was really important, I'm not going to go through all the words on this right now, but if you were not here yesterday, I would like you to watch the little YouTube video I uploaded in the corner. It's about 3 minutes long. It's really important for you to understand what the purpose of each of the 3 assignments are for the week and when to complete them and why. So I spent some time talking about that yesterday. So please take a look at that if you were absent. Okay, so here's a look at the choice board, but I think we're going to come back to that in a few minutes, because first today, what I would like to do is, I got to click to get past all the videos, is to talk about collage. Collage is not a new art form by any means. It's been around for a long time, and collage is usually thought of as mixed media, okay, combining more than one material in an artwork. And what I was looking for in doing research on Banksy and also on just street art, and one of the things that kept coming up was, you know, the idea of addressing social issues and creating artwork that communicates ideas and a message. Collage is another art media, which is another way of saying materials, that does that as well, often through text and image. So one of the things that we want to consider and talk about is how artists do that. How do artists communicate ideas through their artwork? So yesterday we were looking at Banksy a lot, and we talked about how he was British, and a lot of his artworks had to do with his thoughts and opinions and ideas about the British government, about capitalism, about consumerism, which is, you know, how much maybe a society is obsessed with owning things or using materials, that kind of thing, and issues like that. But social issues don't have to be limited just to politics. Okay, so and also pop culture as a bigger thing isn't just about politics. Pop culture is the stuff that, you know, makes up who we are as a society. So when I was looking, I found this really interesting contemporary artist called Peter Horvath. Now, a contemporary artist is one who is living and making art right now. So contemporary artists are you and me, right? We're artists, we're living and making artwork right now. So it's influenced often by what's happening now, but they're artists, contemporary artists could be artists of any style. Okay? It doesn't have to be like any particular style. They could have a classic style, they could have an abstract style. That doesn't define them. But what I really liked about this guy is that he shared a lot in common with Banksy in regards to his subject matter. So this is not his website. This is an art site where they were critiquing his artwork. See how it's similar? There's some simple, striking, sort of recognizable images, maybe not so much in that one, but, and then also some words. And they interviewed him. He's a Canadian artist who started out with photography and then started to build collage from there, and has some really interesting images. So there's like the main body, but then you see over on the side also some collages of people that you might even recognize. So those on the side, and I think I read in other places that his method was to take big posters of like an original image, like a bottom image, I'll say, and then put things on top of it, like papers, and peel stuff off and print stuff and paint stuff on top of it. So they asked him some interesting questions. Like they asked, when did you first start becoming an artist and notice that you had this creativity? And he says when he was 6 years old, he had a camera and he started thinking in terms of like a series or an idea, a concept. And he brought his friends into his room and had them hold, like each one held one of his toys, and he would take a picture one at a time, or he'd take a picture of cars in a series. So he was kind of thinking conceptually. And then his use of collage developed from first his photographs, then magazines, cutting them up. And like, for example, you can see this one. This wasn't from his childhood. I'm not talking about that. But like he used newspaper and books and things from vintage photographs. So this might remind you, this kind of collage, there's something that's pretty popular right now that I've seen on the internet called junk journals. My daughter, who's in college, does this art. She takes things that she finds down, like we went shopping quite a bit this summer, quite a couple times at the Antique Emporium right there on the corner of Lake Street, where you can go in and you can get like she always wanted to get the old postcards or just little clippings and magazines and stuff that were old, not even had to be in good shape, and she would clip them up and glue them into even older and nastier books, used books and stuff. And these books would become like a journal full of images like this one that were kind of juxtaposed together. Remember, we talked about yesterday juxtaposition being two subjects or objects placed together to create a new meaning. So when you take a look at a collage like this, that's exactly what he's doing. And that's what junk journals are about too, creating new meaning and art out of combining images and words. So then they ask him about his influences, and we haven't talked about any of these artists yet, but we probably will, especially Barbara Kruger. She's an artist that combines image and text. So they ask then about why he would use the vintage sort of materials. Here's the artwork that I had on the front slide. That's David Bowie, who was like a punk rock sort of fashion glam rocker from the 70s and 80s. And so when you see this image, if you know David Bowie and you see the kinds of colors and this photograph and you know what his music is like, you're getting a certain like image in your head. You're associating certain things with David Bowie when you see this. Then you're like looking at the words and the way that he's handled, his hair and some of the other stuff. So part of the pop culture imagery is tapping into what the viewer already knows. So like if this image was Elmo and it had all that other stuff around it and those colors, that would be a whole different feeling, wouldn't it? So by accessing our prior experiences and our knowledge and our ideas, the artist is making some really deliberate choices as to what he wants us to think and feel. So goes on to talk about how it's his work has changed over the years and his idea has changed. And then I got to this question and I got so happy. The interviewer says, "You often take images away from their usual context. What are your reasons for this, and how do you feel this shapes your artwork?" For me, it is a thought exercise to cut elements out of their context and repurpose them to represent a totally different meaning than originally intended. Juxtaposition, literally. He goes on to say it can be challenging, almost like solving a puzzle. And although I begin creating the piece with a clear intention, it often evolves into something entirely different than I had planned, revealing itself during the creative process. So he says that he really likes to take things from different places, put them together, make us think. It's like a puzzle he's solving. And he acknowledges that sometimes he has this idea and he's figuring it out and it changes course or it goes somewhere he doesn't expect. That happens a lot in art. That's probably happened to you, where you thought it was going one place and then it goes a different place. Sometimes that happens by accident, like due to a mistake or something you didn't plan, but sometimes it just kind of goes, you go with the flow, and that's okay too. But I loved it that he was talking about um, juxtaposition, that combining of different subjects in a new way to create meaning. So that is a little glimpse at contemporary collage, which is something that you'll have an opportunity to choose for yourself for this coming up artwork. Okay, so keeping in mind that in both the case of collage, or if you were a street artist, remember we saw in that video, Banksy was standing on a bicycle, holding up with one hand the cardboard and spraying with the other. You won't have time in an artwork to, you're not like writing out an essay about what your feelings about, military action in Afghanistan is about. You have to convey your feelings kind of quickly and directly through your choice of image and words. So, how do you do that? Through symbols, through recognizable images, and through carefully made choices. So, yesterday I said in your classwork, let me go to that slide. You were one of the options is to think about how you can pair up things to communicate through juxtaposition. And I was like, so you got to think carefully. Don't just say, I'm going to pair a poop emoji and a banana. And then if I said to you and pressed you on that a little bit, okay, so what does that mean? What are you trying to say? Oh, I don't know. It's funny. It's not what we're doing here. Okay. Not all art means something and conveys a message like that. Like one of the artworks that was due this week, the choice was to take a small subject, study it very closely, draw it with detail and detailed shading. That didn't mean anything. It was about shading and observing. It didn't have anything to do with any social issue. And that's sometimes what art is. We were building the shading skill, okay, and observing and learning to draw what we see. And that's an important skill. And skills like that give you the ability to communicate better if you were choosing to do that. Okay, so when you are doing this week's work, you have to be deliberate in your choices to communicate effectively. Okay, does anybody have any questions before we start going into the artworks? Because we'll address all that a little bit more, but I want to give you a chance to ask a question before I go forward. Okay, so I am not going to go into the classwork choices right now. I did that yesterday, so you can look at those yourself. Remember that those little blinky 1, 2, 3s are links. So don't just go by the description in the boxes. Click on the circles with the numbers. That'll take you to a separate slideshow where all the information is, and more links and more examples and videos and the whole kit and caboodle. Okay. Yesterday, thankfully to Zach, he found out that he discovered that my link was broken for the first one. So I got that fixed. The virtual field trip is working now, so you can go and do that one. And then the other one is Sketches, working on some ideas for the juxtaposition. Either of those classwork options are going to help you going into the artwork part of the week. But I'm going to go over those artworks today so that you might feel like one of them would help you more than the other. Okay. The classwork assignment is due today by the end of the day, not by the end of school day. So you have all day to work on one of those two. So let's take a look. I'm going to show first 1 and 3 because they're very similar. Okay. So option number 1 for your artwork this week is to create a collage. I thought this might be pretty fun because probably a lot of you have created collages before. You may have even done one that sort of addressed a social issue. I'm not sure, maybe that's happened before. So you basically have two options when it comes to the collage. You can do one in real life with your hands using any kind of paper or material. So I start just like put down everything I could think of, knowing that you could even come up with like tons more things that I couldn't think of. Newspaper, magazine, wrapping paper, old books, scrap paper, construction paper, random ads, whatever you can come up with that you're allowed to use. Okay, so be careful about that. Then photos, ribbons, fabric, patches, string, yarn, whatever else you could come up with, and any other stuff that I just would never think of. Attaching it together with scissors, glue sticks, staples, using markers to write on it, whatever works, okay? So that collage can be done in person, but it also could be done digitally, like in Photoshop or Fresco. So you have either option that you could work with for your collage, okay? So as far as material goes, you can work with either one of those. Next, we need to talk about the subject matter driving your collage. So we're going to spend a minute talking about this because it's really important for me to communicate to you that you do not, while we're studying Banksy and even Peter Horvath, that used social issue and pop culture as their driving force for their artwork. That's what I want you to use also, but it's really important for me that you understand that you do not have to um, uh, have politics at the central theme of your artwork. You do not have to use anything that makes you uncomfortable or that you don't believe in. That's totally not the point of this piece. You have to choose something that drives you, that you care about. Okay, so start by brainstorming ideas. What do you care about? It has to be something that doesn't have to be something controversial or that you think I care about or that I want you to do. Think about something that you care about that's just a little bigger than yourself. That's what a social issue would be. So, like, for example, let's say you do your own laundry, and whenever you do your laundry, socks end up missing. That's not a social issue. That's just something that makes you sad and upset. Okay? It's not a social issue. There are lots of social issues that maybe affect you and you can relate to and that upset you. I tried to brainstorm. I'm not a teenager, okay? So I might not be able to relate to all the things that might bother you. But I did put down things like, just as ideas, conservation, the environment, LGBTQ rights, animal rights, peer pressure, mental health, bullying, drug use, social media. And then I thought when I got here, virtual learning, like there's a million things that affect our society that you might feel compelled to make an artwork about. If you want to address politics or something else like that that we saw in Banksy's work, you are certainly okay to do that. But I'm not telling you you have to make it exactly like his. Once you get some ideas about stuff that you care about, then you want to start developing those pairs and subjects and juxtaposition of ideas. And then you're thinking about what symbols or ideas can be combined. What and how do they what kind of things do they bring up in our heads? Okay, so like um, Banksy used rats when he was referring to politicians, okay, because of the connotation that brought up. He used a lot of policemen to represent, you know, the government and law enforcement. So what's your subject? How can you represent it? In Peter Horvath's uh, collages I just showed, he had all that vintage stuff to kind of show a time gone by and simplicity. So what can you do? Remember this one I talked about a lot yesterday? The guy is like aggressive and hostile. And you know that when you look at how he's dressed and his stance. What if that was, well, I'll go back to my Elmo example. What if that was Elmo throwing flowers? It would read totally differently. Okay, so you really have to think about your choices. So this is a slideshow for collage. When you get here, go and look at all the pictures and read some more information about Banksy. Okay, that's going to help. Go and look at Peter Horvath's own website with all of his artwork and some stuff about him. It'll help. I wanted to read you some of this because when we were doing Van Gogh, do you remember some of you did a critique, and I did a critique, led you through a critique in class, where the 4 steps of critique are describe, analyze, interpret, and judge. So when I was reading about Peter Horvath and doing some research, this was critique written by an art critic on this website. I want to read you some of it because I think it's pretty interesting, and it shows like we were doing that. Okay, describe, analyze, interpret, and judge. So is this guy. Listen to the language he uses to describe and analyze this artwork, these collages. Okay, it says, driven by the desire to deconstruct and recontextualize, Peter embraces digital and analog techniques to create art that reinvents narrative and redefines meaning. Peter's approach is colorful and dynamic, and through the use of juxtaposition and layering, he exposes the beauty in chaos. With a focus on materials such as vintage American advertising materials, pop culture, iconography, and street ephemera, Peter explores the surreal, the nostalgic, and the hypnagogic. Hypnagogic. I don't know what that word means. That last one, I don't know that word. But so I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, that is something, that paragraph. It has so many just colorful and sophisticated and crazy words. I wanted to give it as an example of art world art critique. So you could see sort of, if you were going to go on from this and become an art critic, this is the kind of stuff that you might sit around writing about artworks. This is interesting. Okay, so the product for this choice: to create a collage, either in real life or digital, commenting on a social issue that you feel driven by. Okay, you want to make sure, first of all, that you do not have to write it out in your collage. Like Banksy usually didn't do that. You would describe it. I'm going to show you on the next slide. So you wouldn't have to do something like, let's say your social issue is something about how virtual school is bad. You don't have to literally write in your collage, virtual school bad. Okay, you don't have to do that. You think of other ways to communicate. Make sure to establish a clear and important focal point and be very deliberate with all choices, colors, image, and words. Here's the reflection question slide, which you would also do and hand in your artwork with. Okay, anybody have any questions on that first choice, which is the collage?
When is this due by?
This is for next Monday, Kaden. This is the artwork for next Monday. Classwork is due today, and that's that first column. But these are the artworks due next Monday.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to jump down to number 3 because it's almost exactly the same. Only in this one, we're creating an artwork that is much more similar to Banksy's style. So the first one was a collage in real life or digitally. This one is going to be like the closest that we can get without actually going out and spray painting, graffiti, vandalizing in a WeGo, because I'm not going down like that, right? We're not doing that. Okay, so this is asking you to create an image either digitally in your app or with like black marker on paper, which would be as close as we can simulate, I think. That expresses an opinion or a message that you feel about a specific social issue using simple text and image. So it's really close to what Banksy does, but no spray paint, no vandalism. Okay. So the examples I have in this slideshow, I found as part of a college class and their artwork. So the students involved are a little bit older than you by and large, most of you. So most of their artworks are a little bit political in nature, and that might have even been a requirement for them. So I want you to remember that you are not required to do that, okay? Same thing, I'm not going to go over the slide again, obviously, because it's the same exact slide. But remember that you have any issues a little larger than yourself, okay? Thinking about how it affects all of society and your position within that, okay? So either black marker on paper, because we're keeping it to very limited values, just like Banksy did with his stencil, you know, just black, white, maybe a gray, maybe a red or some other color to accent, but really just keeping it very, very simple. Limited words, and all your choices should be so deliberate. Remember, no poop emoji and banana. If you can't tell me and describe why you made what choice you made throughout the whole thing, then you're not doing it right, okay? Every choice should be done deliberately. I like how this one even has like fake drippy marks. That's pretty cool. Okay, so this one is the closest to making a Banksy as we're gonna get because we're not spray painting. But it's very similar to the first option. So we've got collage and we've got this high contrast graphic image. Remember we talked about that yesterday because this is our value week. So we're talking about the balance of blacks and whites in your image to make that image visible. Okay, so pretty much the same thing, only instead of a collage, you're creating that high contrast graphic image using pretty much just black and white, maybe a little bit of red here, maybe a gray. And then there's a reflection question slide there, and you would attach your artwork to that. Okay, any questions on choice number 3? 1 and 3, very similar. Okay, some of you are going to want or desire an option that does not require thinking about social issues or expressing that opinion. So that's represented in choice number 2. Choice number 2 is picking up on the value part more than anything. So number 2 is asking you to create a notan design. And if you recall, notan is something we talked about last week and this week. It's that the design principle of balancing in harmony black and whites within your artwork. So this, you can, we tied this to Banksy and other sort of street designs, and that, you've got to carefully manipulate your blacks and whites in order to establish and communicate your image and your message. So a notan design, a Japanese notan artwork, starts with a very simple, intact black square. And then by taking images from it and then reflecting them and going around the square, kind of like popping out the images, you create a balanced image that has both positive and negative black and white design. So this one will not communicate a social image message, but we're going to use pop culture imagery just like a lot of contemporary artists do, including Banksy and Peter Horvath. So you can see mine here that this is an in-progress shot right here. I'm using 8-bit video game imagery, which is one of my favorites, to make my design. And I've never done this before. I've made notans in real life, which you can do. So you can do either. Create a notan by actually taking a piece of black paper, drawing out your design, cutting it with scissors or an X-Acto knife. You're gonna have to supply all that yourself, and rotating it and gluing it down. Or you can do it in Photoshop or Fresco. So I had done it in real life, which was pretty helpful when I got to this part, but I am going to show you as many ways as I can how to do that in your app. So here is my slide showing you some of that. Like I started with a sketch. That's a black square in Photoshop with just a sketch of my ideas on it. You can see it's kind of messy. And then as I worked on it more and more, I used a combination of selection tools and my brushes to make it cleaner and crisper. I made perfect circles, which I can show you how to do, stuff like that, to make the design. But you see what I mean? How it starts as just in the square, and then as you go, you're like cutting out of the square, and whatever you cut out, you move to the outside and you reflect it. Okay, so here I have a video showing you how to start it and how to get moving on it. Okay, you're going to want to watch that if you choose this one and you want to do it digitally. Okay, this slide is information how to create notans using paper, like the traditional way. I put 2 of them here, but there's about 7,000 on the internet. Okay, so you can do that. I am not going to show that in class. Okay, it's too time consuming for the time that we have together. I just can't do it. If you're going to make one out of paper, you're just going to need to you're going to need to either watch one of these or find a tutorial online that you can follow. But the principles are exactly the same, and it's that balance of dark and light. And I want you to use pop culture imagery. So that is that. And here is your reflection question there. So I want to show you what this looks like. So this is my Photoshop. Apple Pencil, here it is. And it's really difficult for me to do this while I'm talking because I really have to concentrate, which sounds really embarrassing. But when you start working on this, you'll know what I mean. So if you look at my layers palette over here, I'm in Photoshop. And if you look at my layers palette over here, you can see, I'll zoom out for a second, that I have this black square here that I've just slowly been chipping away at. Okay, so when my black square layer is on, you can see that it has gotten pieces cut out of it. Actually, you can see this too. Like, remember the checkerboard indicates transparency. So that's my black square with like holes cut out of it. Okay, and I'm just systematically going through my sketch. So now I've turned off everything except for my black square and my white line layer. So that was like my original drawing layer. And I made sure that everything I'm doing is on different layers because I sure don't want my white lines to show in the end. That would be a nightmare. So I have nothing on my black layer and I'm just cutting stuff out of it. Okay, so oh yeah, I realized that at some point I got some black on here, but I don't know what layer it's on. Well, there's only 2 layers on. So, oh, I had, there. I'm gonna get rid of that because it's really bugging me. Okay, so what I've been doing is a combination of selecting shapes and spaces and stuff like that, and filling and reflecting and all of that. So let me see if I can find, last period I started, I wonder what this is. I feel like there might be something up there, but I can't quite tell. Maybe I'll make a new layer with a color on it so I can make other things stand out. That suddenly seems like a really good idea. So, oh, this is a new thing I learned. You can just swipe these back and forth with your finger. That's really handy. Okay, so I think I'm going to fill this layer with red because I'm having trouble sometimes being able to tell what's what. Interesting. I would like nothing on this layer except for my black square. All right, this is actually a really good time to show you this. Okay, so when you're using your selection tools, there's the rectangular marquee and also the circle marquee. Both of them can be constrained to a perfect square or a perfect circle. So I'm going to show you that right now. If you have none of these selected, that means new selection. That's what I want. forgot if I have a circle or square. Okay, square. So now I want to select, I'm on the black square layer, and I want to select this square so that I can delete everything else on that layer. If I put my finger on that circle that's in this white area right here, and did you see what popped up in this blue box over here? It says select constrained. Now, if I put my Apple Pencil right down in that corner and go like this, it'll keep it a perfect square. If I didn't do that, I could make a rectangle. I could do all kinds of things. Now I need to move this right over there. That went pretty well for the first attempt. I'm actually quite impressed. Okay, so right now I have my square selected. That's good, except I want to erase the outside around my square, not my square, on this layer, and turn off everything else. Okay, so I want to erase all that other white because it's blocking my view. So now I'm going to come down to the bottom and hit invert. So now I took the selection that was in the square and I went outside. Now I'm going to, now I guess erase. Oh, sweet. I didn't even have to use the eraser. I forget it does that. That's awesome. Okay, now I'm going to turn on my red layer. Okay, well, while that's quite ugly and obnoxious, it's really quite helpful because I can turn that off and on. Let's see what else I've got now. So now if I turn everything on, eventually it's going to all be on the white layer. But this helps me. I thought I had something up here. Nope. Okay. All right, so I just put that in because it was really getting difficult to see where I had what. Okay, so I was working on this heart, but apparently I didn't finish it. Okay, so now that I have the heart cut out, as you can see, as it's red, but it's not, I need to make a black version and flip it up. So if in Photoshop desktop, you used to be able to select a whole. You can't do that anymore in this. So like in desktop version of Photoshop, I could use the magic wand and come in and select this whole, but you can't do that here. Oh, actually that's helpful because look, that little thing right there needs to be black. So I'm gonna turn this to black because it isn't. Then I'm gonna, why aren't you doing that? I thought that was selected. It is. Black, black. Let's try the brush. Why aren't you doing it? Let's try erase. Oh, okay, I am on the right layer. Okay, let's go to black dot layer. There we go. For some reason, it doesn't want to go full opacity there. That's why I'm also having trouble on the outside. Okay, so I needed that to be full black. Now I still need to make my heart up there. So that's the part I'm going to be working on next. So I'm probably going to continue recording my progress on this. I mentioned it, but I didn't show it. Well, yes, I did. I didn't show it out loud, you know, show it. This slide back here is me starting and doing everything up to that point, basically. So you should watch that for sure if this is the option that you want to choose. Okay, so going back to our choice board, today by the end of day, not by the end of school, you have your classwork due. And remember, we're really trying to stay with the schedule of getting the classwork done Monday or Tuesday. Doing the artist log, which is the progress on your big artwork, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe into Friday, and then getting your artwork done by Monday. So what questions does anybody have on the stuff that we covered today?